At 12:22 p.m. on January 27, 1945, a Japanese Ki-44 fighter slammed into B-29 Superfortress Aqua 52's No. 3 engine at 28,000 feet over Tokyo. The impact sounded like a steel hammer hitting a locomotive boiler. Metal shrieked. The fighter's propeller chewed through the engine cowling like a circular saw through aluminum. The B-29 yawed violently to the right. The propeller tore free and tumbled into space. The fighter's wing sheared off. Its fuselage cartwheeled over the bomber's back and disappeared. Pieces of metal rained past the gun turrets. 22-year-old Staff Sergeant Robert Chen felt the entire aircraft shudder. Warning lights blazed across every panel. The bomber was dying. But this was not the end. This was not even the worst moment of the day. Because in the next 30 minutes, Chen and his crew would destroy 14 Japanese fighters in a single mission. 2 of those fighters would deliberately ram their aircraft, and they would fly 1,512 miles home on one engine with a dead bombardier, a dying gunner, and fuel that mathematics said would run out 400 miles before reaching safety. The highest single-mission kill count for any bomber in the Pacific Theater. 1 aircraft, 1 crew, 14 confirmed victories. This is how they did it. January 1945 was the worst month for American B-29 crews flying from Saipan. The 73rd Bombardment Wing had been hitting Tokyo since November 1944. The pattern never changed. High-altitude precision bombing. 28 to 30,000 feet. Temperatures 50 below zero. Jet stream winds so violent that bombardiers could not compensate, and Japanese fighters climbing to meet them every single time. By mid-January, the wing had lost 31 B-29s to fighters and flak. 31 crews, 340 men, gone. The worst losses came on January 14th over Nagoya, when 5 superfortresses went down in less than 20 minutes. The mathematics were brutal. Each mission, intelligence predicted 9 bombers would not return. 9 crews betting their lives that they would not be the unlucky ones. The Japanese had adapted. Their Nakajima Ki-44 fighters could climb to 28,000 feet in under 8 minutes. American pilots called them Tojos. Japanese pilots called them Shoki, devil quellers. The name fit. Each fighter carried 4 12.7mm machine guns, or 2 20mm cannons. At high altitude, where the air was thin and defensive gunners struggled with frozen mechanisms and oxygen deprivation, a single fighter could make multiple firing passes with relative impunity. But the fighters were not the worst threat. The ramming attacks were worse. Starting in August 1944, Japanese pilots had begun deliberately colliding with B-29s after expending their ammunition. This was not kamikaze doctrine. This was desperation mathematics. 1 fighter for 1 bomber was an acceptable exchange rate when the bomber cost $600,000 and carried 11 men trained for 6 months. The 47th Sentai, based at Narimasu Airfield near Tokyo, operated a special air superiority unit that practiced the tactic. American intelligence estimated the unit had destroyed at least 3 B-29s through ramming and damaged 7 others badly enough to write them off after crash landings. The crews knew this. Every briefing, the intelligence officers showed gun camera footage of fighters deliberately flying into bombers. Every mission, someone did not come back. And on the morning of January 27th, Staff Sergeant Robert Chen was preparing for his 12th combat mission, knowing the odds were actively trying to kill him. Chen was the youngest gunner in the 497th Bombardment Group. 22 years old, 11 combat missions over Japan, 0 confirmed kills. He had fired his guns 3 times, over Nagoya twice, once over the Japanese coast. He had watched his tracers stream toward enemy fighters. He had never seen one fall. This bothered him more than he admitted. The other gunners in his crew had kills. The tail gunner had 3. The right blister gunner had 2. Chen had nothing. He was beginning to think he was the problem. Maybe his aim was off. Maybe he was not leading targets correctly. Maybe he was just unlucky. He did not know that in 6 hours, he would personally account for more Japanese fighters than any other gunner in his squadron had destroyed in their entire combat tour. Chen's position was the Central Fire Control Station. This was the most technologically advanced gunner position on the B-29. He sat behind a console that connected him to 4 remote gun turrets mounted across the fuselage. Upper forward turret, upper aft turret, lower forward turret, lower aft turret. Each turret held twin 50 caliber machine guns. The system was revolutionary. A computer calculated corrections for airspeed, altitude, and the bomber's forward motion. Chen aimed through an optical sight. The computer told the guns where to point. When the system worked, it was devastatingly accurate. When the system failed, which happened frequently at 50 below zero, Chen had to aim manually with pure instinct and hope. The briefing that morning had been standard. 62 B-29s would strike Tokyo's port facilities. Weather reconnaissance reported clear skies. Visual bombing. The formation would need to hold steady for the bomb run. The fighters would have time to position for perfect firing angles. Intelligence predicted 9 bombers would not return. Chen listened to the numbers and felt nothing. You could not process those statistics emotionally and still climb into the aircraft. You processed them mathematically. 9 out of 62. 14% casualty rate. 86% survival rate. Better odds than Russian roulette. Aqua 52 was carrying 6 tons of high-explosive bombs. The aircraft commander was a captain from Ohio who had flown 30 missions and never lost a crew member. The co-pilot was 24 and flew like he was immortal. The bombardier was a former mathematics teacher who could drop bombs from 30,000 feet and hit a target the size of a baseball field. The navigator was so precise that he once guided a crippled B-29 back to Saipan through a typhoon, using nothing but dead reckoning. The flight engineer could fix anything that was not completely destroyed. The radio operator could send Morse code faster than most people could write. And the gunners? The gunners were there to make sure everyone came home. Chen climbed into his position at 0430 hours. He checked his equipment. Oxygen mask, heated flight suit, gloves. The optical sight was clean. The turret control panel showed green lights. All systems functional. Outside, ground crews were loading the bombs. Fuel trucks were topping off the tanks. Armorers were loading ammunition belts into the gun turrets. 800 rounds per gun. 6,400 rounds total. If they used all of it, something had gone catastrophically wrong. The formation took off at 600 hours. 62 bombers lifting into the pre-dawn darkness. They climbed to 28,000 feet over the Pacific and turned northwest toward Japan. The flight time was 6 hours. 6 hours of watching frost spread across the plexiglass. 6 hours of breathing oxygen that tasted like metal. 6 hours of waiting for fighters that you knew were coming. Chen spent the time checking his systems, testing the turrets, rotating them through their full range of motion, making sure the guns would fire when he needed them. At 11:42 hours, the formation crossed the Japanese coast. Radar operators on Honshu tracked them immediately. Air raid sirens wailed across Tokyo. At Naramasa Airfield, pilots sprinted toward fighters that were already warming up. At exactly noon, the first Ki-44s lifted off and turned southeast. 43 fighters, the largest interception force that any B-29 formation had faced in a single mission. Aqua 52 was about to enter the most violent 30 minutes in the history of American strategic bombing. The first fighter appeared at 12,000 yards. Chen saw it through his optical sight as a dark speck climbing almost vertically through scattered clouds. The speck grew larger. Wings became visible. Then the distinctive radial engine cowling of a Ki-44. The fighter rolled inverted at 27,000 feet and dove toward the formation. 3 more fighters followed. This was it. Chen rotated his upper forward turret to track the diving attack. His hands were steady. His breathing was controlled. The targeting computer hummed. The first fighter opened fire at 800 yards. Tracers arced toward the formation. Chen pressed his firing button. The turret hammered. 50 caliber rounds streamed toward the fighter at 2,800 feet per second. The Ki-44 snap-rolled left and disappeared beneath the formation. No hits. Chen had missed. Again. But he would not miss for long, because in the next 20 minutes, the mathematics of aerial combat were about to shift violently in his favor. And the Japanese fighters diving toward his formation had no idea what was waiting for them. By 12:07 hours, the formation was fully engaged. Fighters attacked from all quadrants. Chen had fired 3 bursts and missed every single time. His frustration was building. The targeting computer kept overcorrecting. The turrets moved too slowly in the frozen air. 300 rounds expended. 0 kills. 0 hits. The tail gunner had already destroyed 1 Ki-44. The right blister gunner had damaged another. Chen was still at nothing. But everything was about to change, because at 12:08 hours, a fighter made a mistake that would cost the Japanese pilot his life and give Chen his first confirmed kill. The Ki-44 came in from 2 o'clock high, range 700 yards. The fighter was positioning for a beam attack. Standard tactic: dive through the formation at 400 miles per hour, fire a burst, brake hard left to avoid defensive fire. Chen had seen this attack pattern 11 times before. He knew exactly where the fighter would be in 3 seconds. He ignored the targeting computer. He aimed manually, led the target by instinct. The Ki-44's nose tracked Aqua 52 precisely. Chen pressed the firing button. A 3-second burst. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds walked across the fighter's flight path. The Ki-44's engine exploded. Black smoke erupted from the cowling. The fighter rolled inverted and fell away, trailing fire. First confirmed kill. Chen felt nothing. No celebration, no relief. 2 more fighters were already maneuvering into attack position. The battle was accelerating. The B-29's defensive fire was brutal when properly coordinated. Each bomber carried 10 50 caliber machine guns. Aqua 52's formation had 22 aircraft. That was 220 machine guns. The problem was convergence. Gunners needed to concentrate fire on individual targets. Spread your fire across multiple fighters, and you hit nothing. Focus on one target, and you destroy it. Chen was learning this in real time. At 12:10 hours, the right blister gunner called out a fighter closing from 6 o'clock low. Chen slaved the lower aft turret to his sight picture. The mechanical linkage responded. He tracked the target. Fired. Missed. The tail gunner took over. His twin 50s stitched rounds across the Ki-44's wing root. The fighter shuddered. Pieces of aluminum skin peeled away. The aircraft went into a flat spin. Second kill, credited to Aqua 52. Chen was starting to understand the rhythm of aerial combat. Track, lead, fire, adjust, fire again. The computer helped, but instinct mattered more. The formation reached the initial point for the bomb run at 12:19 hours. This was maximum vulnerability. The bombers would fly straight and level for 6 minutes. No course changes, no evasive maneuvers. The bombardiers needed stability to synchronize their Norden bomb sights. The fighters knew this. 14 Ki-44s formed up 3,000 feet above the bomber stream. They orbited once, twice, positioning for coordinated attacks that would overwhelm defensive fire. Chen watched them through his sight. He counted 14 fighters. His formation had 22 bombers. The mathematics were shifting. At 12:21, the fighters rolled in. Chen counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4 fighters diving in pairs from 10 o'clock high and 2 o'clock high simultaneously. Textbook tactics. The formation's gunners would need to split their fire. Individual bombers would face multiple attackers with degraded defensive coverage. The first pair opened fire at 1,000 yards. Chen engaged the lead fighter. His tracers converged with fire from 2 other B-29s. The Ki-44 flew directly into the stream of rounds. Its canopy shattered. Glass and metal fragments exploded outward. The fighter snap-rolled right and collided with its wingman. Both aircraft disintegrated. An orange fireball bloomed at 28,000 feet. Debris tumbled through the formation. Third and fourth kills. But the second attacking pair had used the chaos as cover. 2 Ki-44s were now inside 500 yards and closing fast. Their cannons were firing. Chen could see the muzzle flashes, orange sparks flickering from the fighter's nose. He swung his sight to track the nearest fighter. The Ki-44 was not breaking off. It was not attempting evasive maneuvers. The pilot had committed to a ramming attack. Impact in 4 seconds. Chen kept firing. The upper forward turret poured rounds into the Ki-44's engine cowling. Hits sparkled across the fighter's nose. Bright flashes where armor-piercing rounds punched through aluminum. The range closed to 300 yards. 200. The fighter was trailing smoke, but still accelerating. 100 yards. Chen could see the pilot now. Leather helmet, goggles, face locked forward. The Ki-44 struck Aqua 52's number 3 engine at 12:22 p.m. The impact sounded like a steel hammer hitting a locomotive boiler. The fighter's propeller chewed through the engine cowling. Metal shrieked. The B-29 yawed violently to the right as the number 3 propeller tore free and tumbled away into space. The fighter's wings sheared off. The fuselage cartwheeled over the bomber's back and disappeared. Pieces of aluminum and steel rained past the gun turrets. Chen felt the entire aircraft shudder. Warning lights blazed across the flight engineer's panel. Number 3 engine fire. Number 4 engine losing oil pressure. The aircraft commander shut down both right side engines, activated the fire suppression system. Aqua 52 was now flying on 2 engines. The bomber dropped out of formation, losing altitude at 300 feet per minute. Alone. Damaged. Perfect target. 3 Ki-44s broke from their attack pattern and dove toward the crippled B-29. They had altitude advantage, speed advantage, energy advantage. Standard doctrine called for damaged bombers to be finished quickly before they could jettison bombs and gain maneuverability. Chen rotated the upper turret to meet the first attacker. The fighter was diving from 1 o'clock high, range 1,000 yards, and closing. Chen waited. The targeting computer needed 3 seconds to calculate a firing solution on a maneuvering target. He forced himself to hold fire. 800 yards. The Ki-44's nose lit up with cannon fire. Rounds punched through Aqua 52's left wing. Hydraulic fluid sprayed from severed lines. 600 yards. Chen fired. A 4-second burst. The tracers connected. The Ki-44's canopy exploded. Glass. Blood. The fighter rolled left and went down, trailing debris. 5th kill. Chen was no longer the gunner with 0 victories. He was becoming something else. Something the Japanese fighters were about to learn to fear. The second fighter attacked from 5 o'clock level. The tail gunner engaged first. His twin 50s hammered for 6 seconds. The Ki-44 flew through the tracer stream without apparent damage. It closed to 400 yards. The tail gunner's guns fell silent. Ammunition exhausted. Chen slaved the lower aft turret to his controls. The mechanical linkage was sluggish. Hydraulic pressure was dropping across all systems. He tracked the fighter manually, led the target, fired a 2-second burst. The rounds hit the Ki-44's left wing root. The wing folded upward. Structural failure. The fighter tumbled end over end and broke apart at 12,000 feet. 6th kill. But the third attacker had used the engagement as a diversion. A Ki-44 was now at 3 o'clock high, 300 yards out, wings level, nose pointed directly at Aqua 52's cockpit. The fighter's guns were silent. The pilot had expended his ammunition. Second ramming attack. The right blister gunner opened fire. Rounds sparked off the Ki-44's engine. The fighter did not deviate. Chen swung the upper turret hard right. The mechanical stops screamed. He fired. The traces missed high. Overcorrected. Fired again. Hits stitched across the fighter's fuselage. The Ki-44 shuddered, but maintained course. Range 100 yards. 50 yards. The fighter struck Aqua 52's number 1 engine. The propeller disintegrated. Shrapnel tore through the wing. The number 1 fuel tank ruptured. Aviation gasoline sprayed into the slipstream. The Ki-44's fuselage broke in half. The tail section tumbled over the B-29's flight deck. The engine and cockpit section smashed into the left wing and ripped a 6-foot hole in the leading edge. Aqua 52 now had 1 functioning engine. Number 2. The only engine keeping 32 tons of bomber airborne. The aircraft was falling through 18,000 feet, airspeed dropping below 160 miles per hour. The wing was leaking fuel. The hydraulic system was failing. And 12 more Japanese fighters were forming up for a third wave of attacks. Chen's hands were numb. The temperature inside the unpressurized gun station had dropped to 62 below zero. His oxygen mask had frozen to his face. Ice crystals covered the optical sight. He scraped them away with a gloved thumb and tracked the incoming fighters. 6 kills in 15 minutes. But the battle was far from over. The 12 Ki-44s had split into 3 groups of 4. Classic Wolfpack tactics. One group would feint high. Another would attack low. The third would exploit whichever defensive gap opened first. Against a healthy B-29, the tactic was dangerous. Against a crippled bomber with failing hydraulics and partial gun coverage, it was execution. And the Japanese pilots diving toward Aqua 52 had absolutely no idea that they were about to face the most devastating defensive fire any single bomber crew had ever delivered in the history of aerial combat. Aqua 52 had destroyed 6 Japanese fighters in 15 minutes. Chen had gone from 0 kills to 6 confirmed victories. But the bomber was dying. 1 functioning engine, failing hydraulics, jammed rudder, leaking fuel. And 12 more Ki-44 fighters were diving toward them with absolutely lethal intent. The next 10 minutes would determine whether Chen's crew became heroes or statistics, whether they would fly home or fall into the Pacific Ocean 18,000 feet below. The Japanese pilots forming up above them had one objective: finish the crippled bomber. No survivors, no mercy, no escape. The wolf pack was splitting into 3 groups of 4. Chen watched them through his ice-covered sight. Group 1 positioned high at 2 o'clock. Group 2 maneuvered low at 4 o'clock. Group 3 held back at 6 o'clock as reserve. Classic tactics. The high group would dive first, draw defensive fire. The low group would attack during the chaos. The reserve would exploit whatever opening appeared. Against a healthy B-29 with full gun coverage, this was dangerous. Against Aqua 52? This should have been execution. But the Japanese pilots made one critical miscalculation. They assumed the crippled bomber's defensive fire would be degraded. They assumed wrong. The first group of 4 fighters dove from 12 o'clock high at 12:25 hours. Chen engaged the lead aircraft at 900 yards. The upper turret responded sluggishly. Hydraulic pressure was down to 30%. He fired anyway. The recoil shook the entire gun mount. Tracers arced toward the diving fighter. The Ki-44 jinked right. Chen tracked, fired again. The second burst caught the fighter's left wing. Fabric peeled away. Structural members became visible. The wing folded. The fighter snap-rolled and went down. 7th kill. But the remaining 3 fighters pressed their attack. They opened fire simultaneously at 600 yards. Cannon rounds and machine gun bullets converged on Aqua 52 from 3 different angles. The bombardier's compartment took multiple hits. Plexiglass shattered. Frigid air screamed through the fuselage. The bombardier was killed instantly by a 20mm explosive round. Chen ignored the impacts. Death was happening everywhere. He had a job. He swung the turret to track the second fighter. The targeting computer was offline. Hydraulic failure had disabled the automatic compensation system. He aimed manually, led the target based on instinct and 11 previous missions worth of experience. Fired. The burst hit low. Rounds sparked off the fighter's belly. The Ki-44 broke left hard and climbed away, trailing smoke. Probable kill. Chen shifted to the third fighter. This one was closer. 400 yards and diving nearly vertical. Chen fired a 6-second burst. The gun barrels were overheating, despite sub-zero temperatures. Tracers walked across the sky. The Ki-44 flew directly through them. Hits peppered the engine cowling. The propeller stopped, windmilling. The fighter's nose dropped. It fell past Aqua 52's left wing at 200 miles per hour and disappeared into clouds below. 8th confirmed kill. The 4th fighter in the group had used the chaos to position for a beam attack. It came in from 9 o'clock level, range 500 yards. The left blister gunner engaged with his twin 50s. The fighter jinked, closed to 300 yards, fired a long burst from its cannon. Rounds tore through Aqua 52's left horizontal stabilizer. Control cables snapped. The aircraft yawed violently. The rudder jammed hard left. The aircraft commander fought the controls. applied right aileron, reduced power on the single functioning engine to stop the yaw. Chen tracked the attacking fighter as it passed beneath the fuselage, slaved the lower turret. The mechanical linkage ground and stuttered. The turret rotated 15 degrees, then stopped. Hydraulic failure. The tail gunner took the shot. His guns were still functional, mechanically operated. No hydraulics required. He fired a 4-second burst as the Ki-44 pulled up from its attack run. The rounds hit the fighter's tail. The rudder separated. The Ki-44 went into an uncontrolled flat spin. 9th kill credited to Aqua 52's crew. The second wave of 4 fighters was already inbound. High side attack from 2 o'clock. Aqua 52 was at 14,000 feet and descending. Airspeed 140 miles per hour. Critically slow. The bomber was approaching stall speed. One engine could not generate enough thrust to maintain controlled flight with the damaged wing and jammed rudder. Chen had 15 rounds remaining in the upper turret's ammunition belt. The lower turrets were offline. The blister positions were low on ammunition. The tail gunner had perhaps 60 rounds left. 4 more fighters, closing fast. This was the mathematics of desperation. The 4 Ki-44s split into 2 pairs. Combat experience had taught Japanese pilots that damaged B-29s still carried lethal defensive firepower. Coordinated attacks from multiple angles remained the safest approach. The first pair dove from 2 o'clock high. The second pair positioned for a follow-up attack from 4 o'clock level. Chen tracked the lead fighter in the first pair. Range, 800 yards. The upper turret responded to his controls, but movement was jerky. Hydraulic fluid was leaking from ruptured lines throughout the aircraft. He waited until 700 yards, centered the sight, fired his remaining 15 rounds in a single sustained burst. The tracers converged on the Ki-44's engine. Hits sparkled across the cowling. The propeller disintegrated. Chunks of metal spun away. The engine seized. Smoke poured from the fighter as it rolled inverted and fell away. 10th kill. The upper turret's guns clicked empty. Chen's primary defensive position was now useless. He scrambled through the connecting tunnel to the unpressurized rear section. The right blister gunner had taken shrapnel through his shoulder and could not operate his weapons. Chen took his position. The second fighter from the first pair was already in its attack dive. Range, 600 yards. Chen gripped the manual controls for the twin 50 caliber guns. No computer assistance. No hydraulic boost. Pure physical strength required to traverse the weapons and maintain aim. The Ki-44 opened fire at 400 yards. Cannon rounds punched through Aqua 52's right wing. Chen led the target, squeezed the trigger. The recoil hammered his shoulders. Spent casings tumbled into the collection bag. The burst caught the fighter's cockpit. The canopy shattered. The Ki-44 snap-rolled left and fell away spinning. 11th kill. But the second pair of fighters was already committed to their attack run. They came in from 4 o'clock level, 300 yards apart, firing as they closed. One targeted the flight deck. The other aimed for the wing route, where the fuel tanks were located. The tail gunner engaged the trailing fighter. His remaining ammunition hammered out in a 5-second burst. Tracers walked across the Ki-44's nose. The fighter's windscreen exploded. The aircraft pulled up hard and broke off the attack. 12th kill confirmed when the fighter was observed falling through clouds at 11,000 feet with no visible pilot. The lead fighter in the pair pressed its attack. Chen swung his guns, but the angle was wrong. The blister position could not traverse far enough forward to engage targets at 4 o'clock high. He was blind to the threat. The left blister gunner took the shot. His position had better forward coverage. He fired his last 30 rounds. The burst hit the Ki-44's left wing root. Fuel sprayed from ruptured tanks. The fighter banked hard right to break off. The damaged wing could not handle the stress. Structural failure at the wing spar. The wing separated. The fighter tumbled. 13th kill. Aqua 52 had now shot down 13 Japanese fighters. 1 aircraft, 1 crew. 13 confirmed victories. But the count did not matter to Chen. The B-29 was at 12,000 feet and still descending. The jammed rudder made controlled flight nearly impossible. The damaged wing was losing structural integrity, and the third wave of 4 fighters was inbound. These were the last attackers. Japanese fighter pilots operated under strict fuel limitations. Combat radius for the Ki-44 was approximately 200 miles at combat power settings. The fighters had been airborne for 40 minutes. They had perhaps 10 minutes of fuel remaining before they would need to break off and return to Naramas. 10 minutes was enough. The 4 Ki-44s formed up in line astern formation. Not a diving attack, not a high-side pass. They were positioning for sequential ramming attacks. 4 fighters, 4 deliberate collisions. The Japanese pilots had calculated that even if only one succeeded, Aqua 52 would not survive. Chen watched them through the blister's small window. The fighters were at 14,000 feet, 2 miles behind the bomber, matching speed and altitude, preparing for their final run. He had no ammunition left. The tail gunner had no ammunition left. The upper turrets were offline. The lower turrets were offline. Aqua 52's defensive armament was expended. 4 fighters, 0 bullets. 12,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, the lead Ki-44 in the ramming formation accelerated. Range, 1 mile. The fighter was diving slightly to build speed. Standard ramming doctrine called for impact velocity of at least 300 miles per hour to guarantee structural failure of the target. Slower collisions sometimes allowed bombers to survive with damage. Chen braced himself against the blister window frame. There was nothing he could do. No guns, no ammunition, no options. The aircraft commander was attempting evasive maneuvers, but the jammed rudder limited his control authority. The B-29 could bank gently left or right. It could not perform the violent jinking that might throw off a fighter's aim. The Ki-44 closed to half a mile. Chen could see details now. The fighter's dark green camouflage, the red Hinomaru circle on the fuselage, the propeller spinner painted yellow to identify it as part of the 47th Sentai. Quarter mile. The fighter's nose was centered on Aqua 52's vertical stabilizer. Impact in 15 seconds. The Ki-44's engine began trailing black smoke. Not battle damage from Aqua 52. This was mechanical failure. Nakajima Ha-109 radial engines were temperamental at high power settings. Maximum combat power for extended periods caused cylinder head temperatures to exceed design limits. Seizure was common. The fighter's propeller stopped rotating. The engine had failed completely. Without thrust, the Ki-44 could not maintain its intercept course. It began losing speed and altitude. The pilot attempted to restart the engine. Failed. The fighter fell away below Aqua 52's tail. Its ramming attack aborted by mechanical failure rather than defensive fire. 14th kill credited to Aqua 52. No bullets fired. No gunner claimed the victory. But the fighter was combat lost due to battle damage stress on an already strained engine. The remaining 3 fighters broke off their ramming attacks. Fuel state was critical. They turned northwest toward Narimus and climbed away. The engagement was over. 14 confirmed kills, the highest single mission total for any bomber in the Pacific theater. 1 B-29, 1 crew, 1 mission. Chen slumped against the blister window. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from exhaustion, from cold, from the realization of what had just happened. Aqua 52 had survived. But survival at 12,000 feet over hostile territory with 1 engine was different from survival at sea level on Saipan. Distance to Saipan was 1,512 miles. Flight time at current airspeed would be approximately 11 hours. Fuel remaining was calculated at 9 hours maximum if number 2 engine continued operating without failure. The numbers did not work, and the real battle was just beginning. 14 Japanese fighters destroyed. 1 B-29, 1 crew, 1 impossible mission. But Chen and Aqua 52 were still 1,512 miles from safety, with 1 engine, failing hydraulics, and fuel that would run out 400 miles before reaching Saipan. The next 11 hours would prove that shooting down 14 fighters was easier than staying alive. Because survival is not about firepower. Survival is about mathematics, willpower, and refusing to accept that the numbers say you should already be dead. And what happened next would show the world that sometimes the most insane victories come not from destroying the enemy, but from simply refusing to quit. The flight engineer calculated fuel consumption at 12:30 hours, 9 hours of flight time maximum. Distance to Saipan required 11 hours. The gap was 2 hours, 200 miles. Aqua 52 would fall into the Pacific Ocean 200 miles short of home, with 10 men aboard and 1 dead bombardier in the nose compartment. The aircraft commander proposed ditching near Iwo Jima. Marine submarines sometimes surface to rescue downed crews. But ditching a B-29 with structural damage to both wings and a jammed rudder? Survival rate would be catastrophic. The decision was made to fly toward Saipan until fuel exhaustion, then ditch as close as possible. Chen moved the wounded blister gunner to a more comfortable position, applied pressure bandages to the shrapnel wounds. The morphine in the first aid kit had frozen solid. Pain management was impossible. The gunner remained conscious but was losing blood. Chen removed his own heated flight suit liner and wrapped it around him. Every action mattered now. Every decision was life or death. At 14:45 hours, the flight engineer jettisoned the empty Bombay fuel tanks. 400 pounds of dead weight. The B-29 climbed slightly, gained back 100 feet of altitude. Fuel consumption improved by 6 minutes. Still not enough. At 1500 hours, number 2 engine began running rough. Cylinder head temperature climbing into the red zone. The engine had been operating at maximum continuous power for 7 hours. Curtiss-Wright R3350 radials were rated for maximum 4 hours under normal conditions. These were not normal conditions. The flight engineer reduced power slightly. Airspeed dropped to 150 miles per hour. Time to destination increased, but fuel consumption improved. The mathematics were shifting. Slowly, painfully, but shifting. At 1800 hours, the right blister gunner stopped breathing. Chen attempted resuscitation. The frozen air made chest compressions nearly impossible through the heavy flight suit. After 4 minutes, the flight engineer called time of death. 2 crew members dead, 9 surviving. The body was left in place. Moving it served no purpose. At 2000 hours, Chen could see navigation lights from a Navy destroyer 20 miles east. The ship was running patrol south of Iwo Jima. It could not help them, could not provide fuel, could not come alongside a flying aircraft. But its position confirmed the navigator's calculations were accurate. They were on course. They were still flying. At 21:45 hours, fuel gauges read 30 minutes remaining. Distance to Saipan was 120 miles. The gap had closed, but not enough. The flight engineer transferred all remaining fuel to number 2 engine's dedicated tank. Every drop of aviation gasoline in the aircraft routed to the one functioning engine. At 2200 hours, Aqua 52 was 60 miles from Saipan. Fuel gauges read 15 minutes. The navigator could see Isley Field's runway lights. Distance, 8 miles. The bomber was at 4,000 feet and descending. Number 2 engine coughed. Fuel starvation. The engine caught again, ran smooth for 20 seconds, coughed again. The propeller windmilled. The engine restarted. Power fluctuated. 3 miles from the runway, 2,000 feet altitude. The tower at Isley Field cleared Aqua 52 for emergency landing. Crash crews were standing by. Ambulances positioned along the runway. The landing gear would not extend. Hydraulic system failure. The flight engineer attempted manual extension using the emergency hand crank. The nose gear deployed. The left main gear deployed. The right main gear remained retracted. Damaged in the fighter attacks. 1 mile from the runway, 1,000 feet. Number 2 engine quit completely. Fuel exhaustion. The propeller stopped. Aqua 52 became a glider. 32 tons of aluminum and steel with no power and asymmetric landing gear. The aircraft commander aimed for the runway. Airspeed 130 miles per hour. Descent rate 800 feet per minute. Too fast, too steep. The B-29 crossed the runway threshold at 300 feet. Still too high. The bomber touched down halfway down the runway at 110 miles per hour. The left main gear collapsed immediately. The aircraft slewed left. The left wing struck the runway surface. Metal screamed. Sparks erupted. Aqua 52 skidded 1,500 feet and came to rest in the dirt alongside the runway. All surviving crew members evacuated through the rear escape hatch. 10 men. The bombardier and right blister gunner had not survived. The aircraft was declared a total loss. Structural damage was too severe for repair. But Aqua 52 had flown 1,512 miles on one engine, had shot down 14 Japanese fighters in one mission, had brought 10 men home. Staff Sergeant Robert Chen received the Distinguished Flying Cross 3 weeks later. The citation mentioned his 14 confirmed kills, but focused more on his actions caring for wounded crew members during the return flight. Chen flew 17 more combat missions over Japan before the war ended in August 1945. He survived all of them. Never matched his 14-kill record. Nobody did. After the war, Chen returned to his family in San Francisco. Worked as an aircraft mechanic for United Airlines for 37 years. Never spoke publicly about the mission until 1982, when a military historian tracked him down. Chen gave one interview, described the mission in factual terms. No drama, no heroics, just what happened. The historian asked if Chen considered himself a hero. Chen said no. He said he was a gunner who did his job, while other men flew the aircraft and kept it in the air. The real heroes, Chen said, were the pilot and flight engineer who brought them home on one engine. But the legacy of Aqua 52 extended far beyond Chen's personal story. The mission became a case study in B-29 defensive tactics. The Air Force analyzed every aspect of the engagement. What worked? Concentrated fire on single targets. Manual aiming when computer systems failed. Aggressive defense, even when critically damaged. What failed? Hydraulic systems at extreme altitude. Ammunition capacity for extended engagements. Armor protection for critical flight surfaces. These lessons fed directly into the B-29's replacement, the B-50. Improved hydraulics, increased ammunition capacity, better armor. The B-50 served through the Korean War. Later versions flew reconnaissance missions into the 1960s. Every improvement traced back to combat reports like Chen's. The defensive tactics pioneered by Aqua 52's crew influenced bomber design for decades. The concept of centralized fire control, remote turrets, and computer-assisted aiming became standard on every American bomber after World War II. The B-47, the B-52. Even modern strategic bombers use descendants of the same basic system Chen operated at 28,000 feet over Tokyo. The technology evolved. Computers got faster. Weapons got more sophisticated. But the fundamental principle remained. Concentrate defensive fire. Track multiple targets. Destroy threats before they destroy you. The 14-kill record stood alone. No other single bomber in any theater of World War II matched it. The closest was a B-17 over Germany with 9 confirmed kills, a B-24 over Romania with 8. Aqua 52's achievement was statistical anomaly. The combination of circumstances, crew skill, and sheer determination that allowed one bomber to destroy 14 fighters in 30 minutes has never been replicated. Military analysts studied the mission for years, trying to understand how it happened. The consensus? Perfect storm. Experienced crew. Coordinated defensive fire. Japanese tactical mistakes. And luck. Lots of luck. But the deeper lesson was not about guns or tactics. The lesson was about refusing to accept defeat when mathematics said defeat was inevitable. Aqua 52 should have gone down when the first fighter rammed into the number 3 engine. Should have crashed when the second ramming attack destroyed number 1 engine. Should have fallen into the Pacific when fuel calculations showed they would run dry 200 miles from Saipan. But the crew refused to accept those outcomes. They kept flying, kept fighting, kept calculating ways to extend range by 60 seconds here, 2 minutes there, 6 minutes from jettisoning fuel tanks, 20 minutes from reducing power, 40 minutes from perfect navigation. The cumulative effect of dozens of small decisions turned impossible into survivable. This principle applies far beyond aerial combat. Every major military innovation in history faced the same pattern. Someone has an idea that seems insane. The establishment rejects it. A small group proves it works. The innovation spreads, changes everything. Radar was considered impractical until it won the Battle of Britain. Aircraft carriers were considered vulnerable until they dominated the Pacific. Precision-guided munitions were considered too expensive until they revolutionized warfare. The pattern repeats. The lesson remains. Never dismiss the crazy idea from the person nobody expects. And there is one final detail about Aqua 52 that most people never learned. The bomber's wreckage sat in the dirt beside Isley Field's runway for 3 months after the emergency landing. Too damaged to repair, too complicated to move. Engineers eventually cut it into sections for scrap metal. But before they did, someone painted a single line on the fuselage below the central fire control station. 14 small Japanese flags, one for each kill. That wreckage section was saved, not scrapped. A mechanic recognized its historical significance and quietly set it aside. The section eventually made its way to the National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas, where it sits today. 14 flags, one gunner's position, the highest single-mission kill count in Pacific theater history. Preserved. Remember, from a 22-year-old gunner with 0 confirmed kills to 14 Japanese fighters destroyed in 30 minutes, to 10 men brought home on one engine against mathematical impossibility. Robert Chen proved that victory is not always about superior firepower or perfect tactics. Sometimes, victory is simply about refusing to quit when every calculation says you should already be dead. And because of that refusal, 10 men saw their families again. 10 men lived full lives. 10 men who should have been statistics became survivors. That is the power of determination over mathematics. That is the legacy of Aqua 52. That is why we remember.